Hi, this is Mr. Evans, and I'm sitting in the back of room 310, and we're ready to take a look at cells and organelles in this week's screencast. You're going to need to study a lot in this section. There's going to be an awful lot of new vocabulary, many little vocabulary terms that you'll need to memorize. So pay close attention in class, take good notes, and hit your textbook hard. A little bit of background here. People did not know there was this microscopic world around them for a very long time, and it was up to this fellow Leeuwenhoek who finally gave us the first decent microscopes. Microscopes used to be pretty awful little things, kind of like those jeweler's loupes you had to hold up real close to your face. But Leeuwenhoek, this Dutch lens maker, was able to combine several lenses and greatly increase the magnification and resolution. Here's one of his early microscopes over here, and because of Leeuwenhoek, he was able to, his creation here, he was able to actually view the first bacteria. He scraped some of the film from his teeth and took a look at it, and was amazed to see what he called animalcules. He viewed the first blood cells, the first sperm cells. He even wrote in his notebook, he made the observation that fleas have fleas themselves. So a whole new world is opened up with the invention of the compound microscope. Now there are many variations on this basic theme here, but I'd like you to note that there are just really three types of cells we'll mostly be concerned about in this class. Here in the middle we have a plant cell, and it's very recognizable because of the strong cell wall all the way around it. That cell wall is of course made of the carbohydrate cellulose and a little bit of protein mixed in. To the left here we have an animal cell, and animal cells are recognizable because of the lack of a cell membrane. And over here on the far right we have a bacterial cell, and we'll start calling those prokaryotes. The big difference here is this one lacks the nucleus on the inside. It lacks all of these organelles you find in the plant and the animal cell. It does have DNA. It does have these structures on the end, flagella, to help it move about. It does have a cell wall. It does have a membrane, but it really lacks all the tiny organelles found in the larger cells, the plant cell and the animal cell. You might remember this little hierarchy. Cells become tissues, tissues of different types become organs, and organs form organ systems and ultimately bodies. This cell down here has been dyed with some fluorescent dye to make some structures appear more prominently, but a whole lot of different cells will become the tissues and organs that make up something cute like this Akita puppy over here, which is now a great big dog. But just remember the hierarchy, and cells are doing all the work of life. They're the smallest unit that can carry out all the functions of life. And when we think about all these functions, just as you have to breathe, your cells have to take in some oxygen and some carbon dioxide, get rid of the carbon dioxide. Cells have to eat, in a sense. They have to take in food, they have to digest it, and then they have to convert that to other molecules that they can use for energy. Cells have to remove waste. If waste builds up, the cell becomes toxic and is going to die. Cells respond to changes, maintain homeostasis, and most cells are at some point going to divide, and we'll have some new cells. Sometimes those cells are called gametes, and they'll be used for sexually reproducing organisms. So let's start on the outside and work our way in. And I hope you remember this molecule from class. This is a phospholipid, and phospholipids form the basis of our membranes. And I like to think of these molecules as kind of having a split personality here. And when I say a split personality, the phosphate head has an attraction to water. We say it's hydrophilic, and the tails are not so fond of water. We say that they are hydrophobic. And these molecules are going to be arranged in a lipid bilayer, and we can see down here on the bottom what that looks like inside the cell. Cell membrane outside the cell, the phosphate head's facing away. They're also facing the interior of the cell, and the lipid bilayer, the fatty acid tails, are pointing towards one another. It forms a wonderful barrier, and we might also notice there's some proteins embedded in this cell membrane. Some are sort of protruding from it, and we even have little carbohydrate chains that might act as sort of an ID tag for the cell and say, this is what kind of cell I am. Vacuoles. Vacuoles are used for storage, and here we have a plant cell. Most of the interior of that cell is taken up by this water storing structure, the vacuole. It gives a little bit of strength and rigidity to the cell wall and helps hold the plant up. But some simpler cells, such as this paramecium over here, has something called a contractile vacuole, which is good for pushing water back outside of the cell. So vacuoles basically for water storage. Animal cells have them as well, but they won't be very prominent at all like that central vacuole inside of a plant. Digestion, lysosomes. Food molecules are coming in, they're packaged up into these little vesicles, and eventually these vesicles are going to fuse with something called a lysosome. The prefix lys means to cut, and lysosomes are actually going to cut or digest food molecules a little bit further for use by the cell. Mitochondria, and I always remember that these are the mighty mitochondria. These are sort of our little generators for the cell. They are the electric system for the cell in a sense. They're providing the power. And pay close attention. You can always recognize one of these. I expect you to recognize one without any labels. Mitochondria have this very heavily infolded inner membrane. They have two membranes. The outer one's smooth, but this inner one has many, many, many folds to it. And you might start asking yourself, what's the purpose of all that heavy infolding? Chloroplast. Chloroplasts are easily recognizable because of these green discs inside, which are called thylakoids, and they're stacked up. You might think of your chloroplasts as sort of your solar collectors and your garden. They're found in plants, and they're going to take the energy from the sun. We're going to add in a little bit of carbon dioxide and a little bit of water, and the plants are going to be able to manufacture sugars through the process of photosynthesis. So recognize what a chloroplast looks like with those little stacks of green discs on the inside of them. Making protein, now that's a pretty big involved process, and we'll take a look at an animal cell here and point out some structures that are needed to do this. The nucleus contains the information needed to make a protein on the DNA. Ribosomes, which can be either loose in the cell or attached to the ER, the endoplasmic reticulum. Ribosomes are your protein factory. And finally, we have the Golgi apparatus, which is kind of like the UPS store. It might package up these proteins and send them on their way for export. So proteins start to finish, very involved process. I have my nucleus, there's my double helix. One little section of that would be a gene, and that is going to be copied to a smaller single-stranded molecule, my RNA. The RNA is small enough to leave the nucleus through a little pore, and it's going to find its way to the endoplasmic reticulum. And studding the surface of the endoplasmic reticulum are these ribosomes. That RNA is copied, the information is copied, and a molecule of protein is formed. And now it's going to have to be packaged up into a vesicle. That vesicle will find its way to the Golgi apparatus, and a little bit of modification will be done here. And eventually, a finished protein is going to be exported via a vesicle to the cell membrane. It will sort of fuse with it, and it's off on its way to whatever function it might be carrying out elsewhere to another cell. And finally, reproduction. Making more cells is going to involve the nucleus, and it's going to involve our chromosomes. Those chromosomes are going to have to be doubled and then divided, and in the process of mitosis, we'll be making some new cells. Process of meiosis, we'll be making reproductive cells called gametes. So, bottom line, I would like you, at the completion of this chapter, to be able to recognize the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. I'd like you to be able to recognize differences between plants and animal cells and bacterial cells. And I'd really like you to be able to know the structure and function of our key organelles. So pay close attention in class. We'll be working on some graphic organizers and going through a lot of information, looking through a lot of microscopes ourselves. But bottom line, there's a lot of vocab here, so you're really going to have to be focusing and really doing a lot of study here. So until next time, we'll see you in room 310.